And thanks for staying on. Reporting continues now on Newsroom Africa, Channel 405. As consumers look to get the best deals when buying second-hand cars, how can they protect themselves from buying stolen or unroadworthy vehicles that were previously written off in an accident and passed off as second-hand? Joining me now to unpack this is Autotrader CEO George Mienie. George, it's good to talk to you again tonight on the news feed late night. What is the likelihood of buying a written-off car in South Africa today?
Good to talk to you too, Tabo, and thanks for having me. The likelihood is low. I mean, I suppose that's the first thing to say is the likelihood is really low. The instances of this happening, unfortunately, makes headline news sometimes, and all of the good dealers out there get a bad name. So to answer your question, it is not the norm. But unfortunately, it does happen.
Yeah. And how often is an instant of a rebuild in South Africa? And is this perfectly legal? And what are the pitfalls?
Yes, rebuilding a car is perfectly legal. I suppose the thing that is unethical is not disclosing that fact, because obviously a Code 3 car's value would have reduced, and it would have had to have gone through all the normal checks and balances in order to make that car roadworthy again. And sometimes criminals bypass some of these things, and Code 3 vehicles hit our roads. So Code 3 vehicles are something that is on South Africa's roads, but the transparency around Code 3 vehicles, I think, is what's missing.
Now, generally, who writes off these vehicles? I mean, they're caught in an accident. I presume they are insured. Is it the responsibility of the insurer themselves to write the vehicle off?
Definitely. So the insurers do, in fact, write the vehicles off, and then they do get marked as Code 3s.
And how do they then end up in the hands of the dealers with a Code 2 registration code?
Well, that's a good question, Tabu, because it's more than likely as a result of criminal and corrupt activity that they get re-registered as Code 2s.
Yeah. And for myself as a buyer, what recourse do I have in that instance when I do find out that, in fact, a vehicle that was sold to me as a Code 2 is a Code 3?
Well, I think you've got recourse through the various industry bodies and the ombudsman particularly. And, taking the case to those industry bodies is probably the best that one can do before approaching the courts. But, it's a sad state of affairs that unscrupulous individuals register Code 2 vehicles. Should I say Code 3 vehicles as Code 2?
Right. Now, let's talk about, for example, the contracts that when you purchase these vehicles you get into. For example, you're a buyer, unsuspecting buyer, you're seeing a car, you're seeing a good deal, and you sign on the dotted line that I am happy with the condition of the vehicle and I am buying it as is. How binding is that type of a contract to you purchasing a vehicle that possibly is a Code 3?
There is a principle called let the buyer beware, but there is recourse that the consumer has. There is the Consumer Protection Act, and as I said, there is the ombudsman that one can go to, and then there is the South African courts. Failing that, I think the thing that is the most important thing to do for consumers is do your homework up front. Rather take somebody knowledgeable with you, because having to fight something like that after the case, or should I say after the fact, is much more difficult to do. When you're dealing with criminal activity or unscrupulous activity, it's very difficult to pin individuals or businesses down that have done you in. And, so it's rather better to do your homework up front. Get the VIN number of the car. Do your own verification and ask the dealer for every piece of evidence that supports what they're saying that car really is. And if the dealer is unwilling to give you that information, that's a red flag. contact a franchise dealership with that VIN number and find out a little bit about the history of the car. Ask for a multi-point check. You could even go to Autotrader and do a history check. Not all vehicles have history available on them because they might be too new, or they haven't got any history built up. Call the licensing office with the VIN number. See if you can get some information that way. And then do research on the dealership and see whether they've built a trusted brand, because it's important that in today's internet world, you can do research on businesses. And if there is nothing on the internet about that business, it should raise another red flag.
Yeah. How readily available is this information? For example, the information on written off vehicles by the insurers. Can a private buyer be able to access that?
Unfortunately not, Tabu. So, that's one thing that's being pointed out all the time is a write-off register, which doesn't exist. And a lot of the insurance companies are, writing off vehicles, and this write-off register doesn't exist.
Right. And is there a particular reason why the insurers would not want to have a write-off register and have this readily available to would-be buyers?
I don't know the answer to that, Tabu, and it's a good question. Should the write-off register exist? I think so, and it should be transparent to consumers whether a car is a code 3 or a code 2.
Yeah. And the insurers themselves, are they aware of the vehicles being rebuilt and resold? I mean, whatever dealer is going to do that, does the dealer inform the insurer that, no, I'm purchasing this car for this purpose?
No, I don't think there's an obligation on the insurer once it's written off to follow the tracks of a criminal. It's not what an insurance company typically does.
Yeah. Well, I suppose one of the first advice one would need to take here, particularly from an unsuspecting buyer, is not to purchase a vehicle based on a WhatsApp video, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely, definitely. When I looked at the pictures of that vehicle, there were some clear signs that even the average consumer as a layperson might have picked up. To see welding on clear, visible parts of the underneath of the car is a clear sign that there's something wrong. And if you take somebody knowledgeable with you that could check out the car, somebody that knows a little bit about cars, you'll very quickly pick up whether there's a few red flags here or not. And as I say, do your homework on the dealership itself.
George, while we have you on, what's the second-hand vehicle market looking like as we are recovering from this lockdown?
It is looking very buoyant, Tabu. As a matter of fact, as I've said a few times, online listings of used cars have grown by 138% year on year in the month of October. And searches for cars online have grown by 49% year on year in the month of October. And, when there's more activity in a particular sector or even on the internet, you're going to have a rise in criminal activity as well. So let's not tar every single car dealership with this brush, because it is in the minority. There is a lot of online activity, and the used car market is doing really, really well because new car prices have risen. New car is under pressure. New car sales have plummeted by between 20 and 30% year on year, and used car is picking up the slack because people are under pressure. Their financial situation's under pressure as a result of 2020 and what we've been through.
All right, CEO there for Autotrader, George Mienie. Appreciate your time and thank you for coming through tonight on the Newsfeed Late Night. And